To submit oneself in this way with sincerity means that there is at least faith, sadhana, dependence and acquiescence, which for a man of devotional disposition is of some value. As for the teacher, he is rather practical about it all. He observes the behavior, manners, mentality, and disposition of the pupil rather than just trusting his words. In certain centers, this ritual is designed to create a relationship based on materialistic interests. And it has in fact been claimed that this ritual, which is of later date, was instituted and maintained purely in order to take advantage of pupils in one way or another. Teachers in olden times, not having any such ritual, were fortunately immune to such charges. They held, in accordance with the principles laid down by the Buddha, that nirvana, that is to say, guidance towards nirvana, must be given free and with open hands. They recognized that nirvana is nobody's property, belonging only to nature, and so they had no compelling rituals of this sort. Meaningless in itself, this ritual of submission to the teacher is nothing but an obstacle to the attainment of nirvana. It is contrary to the spirit of the teaching that one is one's own refuge, atahayatano natho. If a would-be meditator has no confidence in a teacher, or if, after inquiries and personal observation, he considers a teacher of no help to him, then he should not waste time and trouble on this ceremony of submission. The important thing is for teacher and disciple to understand each other well. Once they have come to understand each other, any performance or ceremony becomes immaterial. If a person feels like performing the ritual of submission to the teacher, he may as well do so. If not, why bother? Think this over and you will see that it is precisely such ritualism that makes people of other religions, who have a leaning towards Buddhism, shake their heads and lose interest.
They look down on such ceremonies as naive, animistic, fit only for Stone Age man. Such ceremonial conforms more with the faith-based doctrines of theistic religions than with the spirit of the Buddha's teaching. Based as it is on insight and aimed at destroying attachment to me and mine. So if the meditator does perform this ceremony of submission in order to avoid friction with other people who still cling to it, let him do so, fully aware, however, that it is merely a ceremony and has nothing to do with the spirit of Buddhism, which is opposed to all irrational submission. What is really needed is a close bond of friendship between disciple and teacher, which allows the teacher to use harsh language while teaching, if need be, and to demand from the disciple anything he wishes in the way of practice. At a higher level, this close bond should be one of affection, based on reason, insight, and compassion. Teacher and discus ple should not, however, be too much attached to each other. They also should not lack confidence in each other, otherwise troubles may arise, which will be detrimental to the practice in general. The ceremony as discussed here is a low-level practice for people just introduced to Buddhism. In the days of the Buddha, there existed no trace of such ritual. It sprang up only when teachers of later days wished to formalize every step. 7. Asking for the meditation object. There exist set ways of asking for the object to be used for the mental training, for example, Nibbanasami Banti Sakakaranathaya Kamathna Dehi, which means, Venerable Sir, give me a meditation object by means of which to realize nirvana. This is, of course, similar in form to the ritual of taking the precepts. On thinking it over, we see that to ask for a meditation object or kamathana in the same way as one asks for the precepts reduces the status of the meditation object to that of the precepts.
This is, then, just another confidence-boosting ritual for the man of devotional temperament. The man of intelligent temperament would find the repeated performance of such rites against his disposition. This formal asking for the meditation object is mere ritualism devoid of any rational basis. Though it is true that it may be accompanied by worthwhile questions and answers regarding the object. Too much formalism becomes tiresome. The main reason why sectarian divisions develop is that some people do things which others consider ridiculous. So it is worthwhile to reassess how many rituals ought to be performed, in which situations, and by what type of people. Do not be attached to rituals and do not perform them unintelligently and superstitiously so that discerning people find it all ridiculous and the performer himself achieves nothing. Here it should be noted and borne well in mind that the destruction of superstitious clinging to rites and rituals, syllabata paramesa, happens to be one of the main objectives of the mental training. The Pali formula for asking for the meditation object was obviously designed on the lines of the procedure of asking for ordination, now popular in Ceylon but not known at the time of the Buddha. Ordain me for the purpose of realizing nirvana. This formula does have value insofar as it is in keeping with the spirit of meditation practice. It is a safeguard against wrong motives when asking for a meditation object. It reminds the meditator of the fact that the practice is intended for the sole purpose of realizing nirvana. People with the wrong motives meditate in order to enlarge the ego, to be reborn in some heaven, to attain some special status, or to become a superman and show off their personal attainments, or to gain name and fame, or to impress others. The meditator has to realize that to practice in order to attain psychic powers such as clairaudience and clairvoyance is to go astray.
The Buddha stressed time and time again that the life of renunciation proclaimed by him is solely for the attainment of freedom from suffering, for the realization of nirvana, and not for anything lower or other than this. The life of renunciation does not have as its ultimate aim the perfection of morality, or the attainment of concentration, or the gaining of the various kinds of knowledge and vision. The Buddha declared that all these superficial aspects of the life of renunciation are just chaff. Its ultimate aim is nirvana, which he likened to the kernel, the very essence. If the meditator takes these words of the Buddha seriously, nothing undesirable will happen. It is advisable that anyone who wishes to practice should acquire beforehand some understanding of nirvana, albeit a purely theoretical one. With the help of such an understanding, he can more directly concentrate on or aim at nirvana. The best thing is, however, for the meditator to have some insight into suffering and to wish to be free from it by whatever means, just as a man whose head is being held under water wishes at all costs to get his head out of the water to breathe. If a person wishes to be free from suffering as fervently as that man wishes to get his head above water, that is a sure guarantee that he will practice with right intention. So when the meditator formally asks for a meditation object saying, Nibbana, let him be fully aware of this, the true aim of the practice. Then the ritual will not be meaningless, it will serve as a constant reminder that the practice is meant only for the attaining of nirvana. 8. Inviting the meditation object. Some training centers and some people have become so strongly attached to ritualism that they have lost their common sense and actually personify various inanimate things. They give people to believe that each individual meditation object is a divine being, a god.
Not only that, they even personify and name the various experiences arising in the course of meditation practice. For instance, the various kinds of rapture, pity, are individualized under such names as the Venerable Uplifting Rapture, Fra Abhanga Pity, the Venerable Pervading Rapture, Fra Farana Pity, and the Venerable Mindfulness of Breathing, Fra Anapanasati. They go so far as to request this or that venerable sir of their choice to do them favors. As a result, there exist wordy invitation formulas which flatteringly list the attributes of the various divine beings and culminate in prayers for favor. All these practices tend to be animistic or tantric, concerned with spirits and ghosts. It is practices of this sort that result in the permanent splitting off of sections. This sort of personification is common even in the lands where Theravada is dominant, where it is claimed that Buddhism is flourishing and pure. It is even more pronounced in certain Mahayana sects, which have gone so far as to become confused with other religions and have assumed forms so strange that one cannot recognize them as Buddhist sects at all. Thinking it over, one sees that all these practices are worthless and belong with the defilements of craving and attachment. Insofar as they do satisfy, it is only because they conduce to faith. The practice of personifying is, then, just one more form of ritual. It conflicts with the way of practice that existed at the time of the Buddha, which was based exclusively on wisdom and was far removed from the defilements of craving and the like. If there is to be any inviting, the meditator would do better to invite himself by arousing himself to be determined, enthusiastic, and energetic. He ought to invite himself to be mindful at all times, and in particular, to develop within himself the four bases of success, adhipata, namely zeal, energy, willpower, and investigation,